They might just ask you for consent because I'm recording this
Yeah,
meeting.
yeah,
Yeah. Great. So welcome, Kavitha. It's so nice to see you. And thank you for joining this iLoop conversation. And as with all my guests, I want to ask you to begin by maybe describing the turning point that changed things for you. And I think you, in your sort of messaging, you said that you had two big turning points. So maybe you could begin with the first one, and then we'll segue into the second one later.
yeah. I think 40 was a year of huge turning point where my mother died. She was a mentally ill person, and somewhere her death suddenly made me realize that what is happening to me. It was not as much as loss. In fact, it was a relief because she was going through a lot of issues and stuff like that. But there was an individual. Till then, I was with my family. I was the mother. I was the wife. I loved that, and I just got lost in that. And somewhere it suddenly it shifted and said, "Who am I? What's happening within me?" And a lot of unanswered questions of what I went through as childhood, as a mother for my kids, uh, came into my play. I think I went a little bit off, when with teenage kids, uh, you're trying to control them, trying to do something as a mother and trying to fix them up. And uh, thank God I went to a counseling session, and then I realized there's a lot I hold within me, which is so unhappy. And I was from that space, I was acting as being a mother and being a wife. Wife, anyway, it's been a happy space, but with my kids, there's a lot of turmoil. What I didn't have as a mother, I was trying to be that good mother to my children. In that being, trying to be that good mother, I lost my own nature. So there was a lot of inner flagging myself up if I was not that kind of mother.
Yeah.
So which created, I passed it on to my children, and it was not a very happy situation for them, neither for me. This came to light that, when I attended my counseling sessions. So uh, basically this question of what am I doing in any place, in any relationship, what is my part within me, what am I bringing from, where am I coming from, was very very essential to look at. And as that healed, there was a lot of love and compassion, and I didn't need to go and exhibit it outside with the family also. It will just come and flock to me, with the kids or whatever it is. I just had to discover that love within me, for myself and just within me. So that was one first journey where, when my mother died, a lot of things came up, and I had to get healed myself.
Yeah. So I have just a few questions on that. So you mentioned that your mother was not well. You said she was mentally ill. So was that something that had been her condition for some time, or was that something that happened sort of later in her life?
I think it started when I was around 14, 15 years old. And she died of that also. She actually committed suicide
Oh,
from that. She was schizophrenic. And so there was a lot of violence, uncertainty at home. So I think I grew up suddenly to be the one of the parent, taking that role. Not physically so much, but at least in my mind, I had to be that. I was an older daughter.
yeah.
So kind of lost that childhood love, or not childhood, that time of what is needed from my parent. And also that ideal mother, that was not the mother. I have to be this best mother to give to my children. That got formed around that time. So that created a lot of mess. Whenever we say I shouldn't be like my mother, or I should be like my mother, you're not being yourself. So
Yes.
it just creates disharmony within yourself and in your family.
Yeah, yeah. So what particularly triggered you about this sort of, quest to find yourself? I mean, obviously the the very complex grief of, losing your mother, but also the relief because she was clearly suffering, and I'm sure it wasn't easy for you to watch her that way. And I can only imagine how difficult that must have been. So was there any particular sort of point in that sort of grief process that suddenly you began to look at yourself and ask these questions?
I think I had a lovely marriage. So I've always looked up to my husband, and his views I just internalized, and he's fun loving, practical, strong, emotionally strong. So I just gelled with him in such a beautiful manner. But after my mother's death, I said, hey, he's not feeling this. It is not actually grief too much for me. Actually, as I said, it is very big relief in a way. So that it kind of took me, oh, it's not, he's different and I'm different. That is a big revelation for me. In couple of instances, I realized nothing bad or anything, but just the individuation. I said, hey, there's some, I'm separate, it's not him, his viewpoint is not the same thing. I had always looked up to him, and he said, hey, he's that's how he should be. Or suddenly it gave me that mirror, that individuation. Plus that was the exact time the kids were teenage, and my way of attempting parenting was like really to control, to fix them up, to be explain everything, to do it right way, do it with system discipline, would just go out of the window.
Yeah.
So I went like all over the place, and I was ranting this about this to my friend, and who was happened to be a counselor. And she said, why don't you come for counseling? And I said, yeah, why not? Somehow I never had this issue of going to a counselor, because my mother had this illness. It is like, okay, I don't want to go anywhere near like her, so I would like to go. And I went, and it turned out to be, it was not just a counseling, it was just to become aware of, your own self, who you are, what you are. Just opened myself up. The much needed love and compassion was never there. It was dried up. There was a lot of disgust within me for myself.
Mm.
Slowly opened up, and compassion and love started happening. That slow, immediately I could see the changes in the family. I didn't need to do anything then. I just like had to find, even anytime I would kind of shout or get irritated, I would come up. I have this yoga studio, second floor myself. So I would come up and just find that, breathe or whatever for myself, find my love. And immediately I just go down, and then things will just settle. You don't see that, doctor coming and talking to me or something changing. You don't need to make an effort at all. That was like miraculous for me.
I think that's such a powerful point, that actually we often think that it's what we do that makes us, worthy or of value, whereas actually who we are is more important. And if we can connect with who we are, and then the energy that we emanate is what then
Yeah.
makes the difference to the people in our lives. So what actual changes did you, apart from obviously showing up in a maybe calmer, more self-compassionate way, what other changes happened in your life as a result of this realization that you were a separate person, who was worthy of love and all that?
So then other places, my profession, who am I? What am I doing? I've been teaching some kind of yoga for some years now, but all that came into my mind, So I started looking into all those places. I've been given a tool from that, looking at yourself with compassion, whatever it is, whatever your fears, whatever that is coming up. So, and it further enhanced. I got, in my yoga circle also, I enrolled into a program where we look at all these mental processes using tools of yoga, using not like a meditation in terms of sitting meditation, but meditation on your own thought process, on your own psyche. It just like happened to fall right after that counseling. So it continued this way of looking at myself more deeply, from a more deeper space. So that brought a lot of clarity in different aspects of my life with my students. What am I doing? And slowly it got me into, I want to bring this to more people, so that my teaching profession, I got equipped into studied this process of working with the mind, working with people, deeper psyche. So I bring that to my student. So it's become like a completely turning point of looking at myself as an individual. Then apart from being as for the family, my own profession and other spaces.
Yeah. So were you actually doing yoga before this counseling session, or was that a new thing for
I
you?
was doing, but it was more a physical asana, a little bit of pranayama kind of thing. But I think it would have definitely it had prepared me for. I was teaching that time. I've been teaching for 18 years now. So, but I think the working with the body must have helped see things better. It definitely your emotions and mind is not just in your brain. No, it's in your body. So somewhere that's why I could catch these things, understand these very easily. So I imbibed the looking inward process much easily. And I
Yeah.
also found a beautiful Sangha to share with, to be in this journey, any deepest thing where you can just go and share your feelings without being judged, without being giving advice, but somebody just listening deeply really helps in looking at yourself much better. Many times, I think these days we need only that for many of us, especially in these COVID times. Our dream is to bring that to many people.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, in this very noisy world where everyone wants to be heard, there's not many people who are willing to listen. So,
Yes.
so was it your counselor who provided that sangha, or did you create a group where people could talk about how they felt?
No, the counselor was just 3 months and she said, now you can go. I said, how do I go now? What will happen? She said, you will find spaces like this. And that's when I went into the tradition, the Krishnamacharya tradition, where I teach from now, where my teacher Raghu has designed these programs where a person can look at yourself with different frameworks, with the philosophy, Yoga Sutra, with the Mahabharata, as a framework, but looking yourself, as a mirror, using them as a mirror to look within. So there we have a strong sangha, and part of that now we do a lot of offerings from that space.
I'd love to talk more about that later on. But so that kind of almost prepared you for the other big turning point that you're going to talk about,
Exactly.
right? So how
Exactly.
many years later did that happen?
So my journey, my mother died around 40, my counseling happened around 41 or so. Uh, and this happened about 5 years back. That would be 43, 44. Yeah. So it is like exactly as you said, it was a ground. My ground had been ready to delve into something more. And my son's illness happened. You want me to talk about it or?
Yeah, I think that would be helpful because not everyone, will know what happened. So perhaps you could, describe exactly what happened and then what changed for you as a result of that.
Yeah. So my son was say 18 now, 17 that time, and he had finished his 12th standard and he was about to go to college in the next week or so. To Manipal, he had got an engineering admission. And out of the blue, just one morning, got up, he had his breakfast, and suddenly he said, my head is hurting. And he went into the room. I gave him some medicine, and he didn't come out. And then I find him on the ground. He had thrown up. He had seizures, which I didn't realize that time. Took him to the hospital, and we thought it was normal convention. Sometimes people get kids. It was a heat stroke kind of thing. And then they said, it struck me when they said you have to put him in ventilator. And I was like going crazy, by the time my husband had come. And after that, that one day, I think I just lost myself. I didn't completely, I withdrew from that space. There was so much of anger. I couldn't process much. Thank God my husband took over. There were a lot of people coming and consoling, and it was in the hospital. The next day was a surgery. So basically, he had suffered a brain stroke. His left brain has had an aneurysm, what they call. He must have got probably was born with it, and it has burst. So there was a lot of bleeding, and he had to be operated upon, major surgery. He was in the ICU for about 21 days and in the hospital for a month. And yeah, pretty much without going into the emotions, this is what happened.
Yeah. So I think the key thing to remember in that story is that he was perfectly healthy one day, and doing all the things that, young men of his age would be doing. And then suddenly this happened and he was in hospital, and, you feared the worst at that point. But the happy news is that he's fine now. So I think, we can say that he's absolutely fine. But obviously that journey from that moment of, discovering how ill he was to what happened next is the bit that's really been life-changing for you and your whole family, hasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think during that first day, I was like, as I said, I was like completely um, numb. But one thing I knew was I don't want to go near him, because I knew I was distraught, and I was like, I just didn't want him to be anywhere. Even I knew he is unconscious, but I didn't want that kind of mother in me to go near. I don't know how that came. Nobody told me this, but somehow I felt like I can't go near him with this kind of face.
Yeah.
But and then, yeah, then slowly you are, when you are in this process, no, it's just, you're there. It's like when you somebody hears it, it's like, yeah, we did go through, it was hell, but it was like you had to go through, you had to still get up, brush, you had to take bath, you had to go, be in the hospital. So things are like in the moment, there's nothing to do. So you just wait for the doctor every day. He comes and says, yeah, we don't know what can happen. We've done the surgery. Let's wait and see. Um, but what came that day, after the first day was like, I think all those years of some prayer here, some Bhagwan here, there, it had helped me some way. I'm not a staunch religious person. I would go to, like, bribing, give me that, give me this kind of thing. And then I felt, what silly thing, I questioned that also. But that moment didn't know nothing. It's just I had to surrender to something. So there was some Sai Baba, somebody gave me that thing. I said, that seemed to be that pure love for me. So I just like started saying, this is what I want. And I started in that holding on to some faith, something, that moment is was really the only thing you could do. What else could you do? If I had listened to the doctor, I didn't go and check the net for what it was. I till date I have not checked his condition, what it is, what is wrong. I could also afford to do this because my husband Elango was doing all that, so I didn't need to. But I knew if I go into that, I'll tune into what all could go wrong, what all is, it could go wrong, but what sense do I get to know and then fret about it? So I just refrain from that. And even the doctors, when they come, before they come, I would psych whatever he says. Yeah, it could be rude, not, but I'm not going to trust him. I would just actually block him out. I mean, I'll hear, but I wouldn't like psych myself that that's his version. I'm going to trust this. This is going to be okay. So somewhere there was a strong, it's an intention, you can say, prayer, you can say, it's an intuition, you can say, but there was a faith, you can say. But there was this thing slowly building up very, very strongly. And there were lows, there were 3 dips. Suddenly they would get an infection, his course would go down. So it was difficult. So the 2 things I held on to was my intention. I had this visual of him in even the specific T-shirt, sitting in the kitchen table and talking to me, like, and this is not, by the way, psyching myself like with positive affirmation. Somewhere it was put. It was a combination of, as I said, no, intuition, intention, and that is it. And then I had my fears. I would cry for my fears. I would get this thing, but it was like there was 2 distinct. It was very clear. There is Like even as I say, I feel that in my right side and the left side is my that intention. So what I nourished more would kind of, come into. I just kept nourishing this and kept looking at it, not denying this part. Most of us, we also push it down and say, I shouldn't feel my fear. How can I not feel fearful?
Yeah.
To grieve or fear, be feel fear, but not keep continuing to feel that, but to say, I want to nourish.
Yeah.
That is something I just came natural. I don't know how it came, but it just kept coming. But after that, yes, my sangha, I would go to my teacher, and there would be some healing sessions. What part am I bringing in? Something in me that would cleanse, and things would go there. And the other thing was the friends. We never knew we had so many people, and I'm not a social person, but people just came in. Suddenly you would find people praying in your house. There are 4 5 ladies chanting something. I knew there were groups coming at one time and praying for him, like what we were doing for this COVID times. At least many of us are doing that. Was happening for my son, for the whole, my Ilango's friends, Christians, Muslim, any Buddhism, there are so many groups came together and they're sending prayers and wishes. And I think for me, I'm also a people person. I like the, somebody's there, somebody's praying. So I actually formed a WhatsApp group of my whomever, my relatives, friends, everybody together, and I would just keep posting these, and they will send me a praying. So I kind of leaned on to that also as a support, uh, that their prayers and their intentions.
Yeah.
So these two kind of came, helped in
Yeah.
a way to cope my.
I mean, all of this is beautifully sort of captured in your book, that you've co-written with your husband Elango. And This Too Shall Pass. Is that the name of the title? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say, obviously in the interest of time, that we won't be able to talk about the whole journey, but it's beautifully, laid out in the book. And, if people are interested, they should really go and find that book and read it. And I think the point you made that came out so strongly for me is, your power of positivity was something that you, on a subconscious level, you somehow seem to know that you wanted to shield your son from people's fears, or anything negative. And we know that hospitals, even though they save lives, but they can be extremely scary and negative places, because people around you are all sick, and the noise and the activity, and especially when someone is unconscious, people tend to forget. They think that because they're unconscious, they can't hear anything. And so they might be saying things without realizing. And there was one or two bits in your book which really sort of gave me chills, because it was clear to me that even when he was unconscious, that he was listening, he was absorbing some of the things that was going on around him. Can you maybe describe what that particular experience was?
So there's this chant. So one of my co-teachers had sent saying, "You please play this chant for him every day." So he was unconscious completely, but we would play to him. There were many other things we did. We played the Big Bang Theory, and whatever music he was doing, all that, whatever he was familiar with. We would be blank sometimes. There's no like, but just kept stimulating him with different stuff. But this one particular chant was new. I mean, I was not a chanting person. I was, as I said, not much religious, but we just played that on an everyday basis, couple of times at least. And after about a month and a half, when he came back, I was chanting and he was chanting it.
Wow.
He was just chanting the whole thing. It was like so amazing. That's like, oh, there is a part of him has been listening to all these things.
Yeah.
Plus, my husband, when he figured this out. His heart rate would go up when my husband came near him, and he would go back away. It'll go come to normal. It'll go. He's experimented, and with the doctors coming in, it won't happen. So he could that sensing something beyond words, beyond sight, beyond even hearing. That is actually, there's no voice. Yeah, it's just sensing. I think he's touched something very, very deep, what we all yoga people are trying to get into,
Yeah.
that tensing deeply. And there are days, even after that, he would come in and I would be all like, he's not done this, irritable or something. I wouldn't have talked about it, or just I would have entered his room and he'd say, negative, so much negative. He would pick it up so much. I think because he's lost his left brain, which is more cognitive and rational. So the right brain is more the emotional, and so he was in touch with that. That was more alive. So he could actually sense spaces, sense people, much more, even beyond words.
That is that is amazing. And you're right. I mean, we kind of on a core level, we know that this happens, but it's not very often that we actually see it. We have evidence of it. So that's beautiful. And I think it's such a reminder to us all that when someone is ill or someone is in a place where we feel we're not reaching them, that we probably are, and that we should be even more mindful about how we come across and what kind of energy we bring in. So I love that you were kind of like very clear that you didn't want anyone, like, I think there's a thing that you talked about, you didn't even let your mother-in-law go in there because
Yeah.
she was crying and upset and you didn't want her to go there. And I think what was so beautiful is how your friends and your community really flocked around you, but were also very respectful of the boundaries that you wanted, around your son to protect him. And I think that's a real testament to the way you and, Elango have created and cultivated these relationships. So there's much more in the book, and I would really, I would love to talk about how that has gone on to change your life now that he's home and he kind of was on the path to recovery, and also how you helped him to go from maybe being a little bit still quite fragile and still recovering to finding the confidence to be who he wanted to be before he became ill.
That was the most difficult part, I would say. In fact, during the stay at the hospital, it is the doctors that they are taking care. It's everything, you just have to pray. There's nothing else you can do. But when you come home, we realize he has to have these routines, quite a bit of things we kind of slowly, by understanding the people, from reading to him. He couldn't read a thing. He was at 12th standard, 96 percentage, and here he could barely walk first. He was like from bladder control, everything. It was like as if having a baby from zero again, slowly going back. So the following year was coming from like a reborn, and you're become a new parents again. You're next to him. There'll be accidents and falling down and all sorts of things. Uh, and then somewhere his physical strength happened gain, but his brain as something takes a long time to heal, for which it needs gets stimulating. So we used to making do some puzzles, simple LKG UKG kind of kindergarten puzzles, uh, some math, some music, some piano, all that we had put a kind of a schedule and tried to put him there. But there are times, of course, he was such a sweetheart, he would actually follow it so studiously. But there are times he wouldn't feel like, and here as a mother, these things are going to take him to a space which is going to be fully healing, and it's not happening, and you cannot and then thank God for the work that I had done before, knowing myself where I am. I would just like that frettiness I would carry here, fret it out. If I had to cry it out, it is my agony and angst. No, it is my theory that these things 1 + 1 + 1 is equal to 3, and that's the way it has to be. So I would actually go back to remind myself in that dire where he was dying, I could just trust and let be. And that was very powerful experience we've had. What is this now? I'm saying this, if it doesn't happen, it'll happen. He is going to be going down. So I could let go. That letting go was a one everyday experience for me, everyday learning for me, everyday practice for me.
Yeah.
To remind myself and then let go. And then say, okay, fine, we can go ahead and do that. And to leave him, the next and second thing is to trust that there is but the recovery in his brain also was a very sharp, curve. Like it is really day by day there were things happening. He could read little more than before. He could remember certain things. He had temporary short-term memory loss. So he wouldn't remember that what he had eaten in the morning, or like even just before, like he would keep eating. So that from that there was a sharp climb in slowly remembering much more. uh, but then there were places. My husband, I think I should really, he was the, we are two different, polarly opposite, but came together in a very harmonious way for the healing. That he would say, go, let him go and find out his way. Like we had to asked him to buy something or come back from some place. We knew he might know, but then if he gets lost, there was, because he was that bad in his memory. So I would get fearful, but then again I had to go back and remind myself, no, that is there. And one good thing, he also knew the number, and he had the presence of mind, whatever it is that he didn't know. So all that, understanding where he is, understanding where I am, my fears, keeping that aside, and trusting and letting go, and allowing him to discover that slowly, whether it is allowing to go and buy a thing from there, taking an auto from somewhere, or taking a flight from somewhere else and coming, and at the end to finally leaving him in the college at the end of a year. And I'm saying this, leaving at the end of a year where he didn't know what subjects it was, what classroom he was getting lost. It was terrible for me the first day when I had to leave him and come. How will he do? How will he? But in my mind, it was not like it's going to be another rehab for him. I don't care what he's going to study or not. So I had to like literally pull myself away from that space, and I think it did good. Though he didn't complete that degree, went on to do some other college, but it gave him the confidence that I'm alone, I can be. And he was also a teenager. Poor guy, he was trying to find this his own stuff himself, and then he had to go back to a kid again. So it is a double complication for him, As it is, teenagers have the thing, I now my college days, I'm going to go away and I don't care kind of thing. And here it is his illness added to it, where parents can be very clingy and say, no, don't do this, do that, do that. So it would happen. It's not like I didn't have it, I could just let go. There was all these happening, but I took time to be compassionate with myself, process my own fears, but then allowing him to discover that, which again my husband would push him into all these things. I said first I'll resist, but then I said no, it's okay, I think the larger good might be okay. Yeah, who am I to say that this is how it should be?
I mean, the way you describe it, it sounds, obviously sounds very difficult, but I want to stress how hard, I can't even imagine how hard that must have been on a day-to-day basis to kind of allow you know your vulnerable child to go into a world where there's so many unknowns, and so I can only imagine that it was your deep faith and belief that the universe or God or whatever is going to look after him, and that whatever will be, right? And
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
very, I think it's something that we can all strive um to tap into for our loved ones, even if they're not ill. So thank you so much for sharing that. And what is he doing now? So it's been what, 5 years now since that?
yeah, it's been
What's he
5 years. He went ahead to finish his bachelor's in journalism and mass communication last year. Now he's gotten in Australia for his master's
Wow.
in same journalism. So again, every time it's a threshold. We still work. It's now next new territory to send him away outside. Actually, like completely outside, especially in this COVID time. But yeah, again, you say, what am I holding? I think that one memory, as you said, no, Rohini, for me, that one space where that there could be nothing we could do, that 21 days, and only to trust, was a very embodied memory which I could go back to. Otherwise, still I'm as can be paranoid as anybody, to try to control, try to see. But again and again go back to reminding that life did give him, with from that space he could come alive. What is these things, that perspective completely changed. And it's still a journey for me, I would say. It's not just easily letting go as a mother. Is not, I think as a mother we die as a mother, we don't just
I think we are like that even when our children are, haven't been through a life-changing event like that. We still worry about them. But that's beautiful. And I think that's allowed him to really explore and under sort of the loving, but the the non, without your expectations or your fears being laden on top of everything else that he was going through. So I can see how much that would have benefited him. And how did that change the dynamic within your family? I mean, in what way did it change your son's personality? I mean, you mentioned one of the things where, he's now much more sensitive to energies and, maybe his intuition is much more active. But in what other ways did you notice a change in him?
I think he's completely a changed guy. He was like one of this typical teenager, don't care, that kind of, not too much interactive in his own world, his couple of friends and that kind of person. But now he's like, he goes and wishes everybody, goes to adults, talks. He's much more a people person. He loves talking to people. Um, this whole experience, I think that connections, he's gone and met with those deeper connections. At another level in yoga, we believe, no, we're all connected, not believe, it is true. We're all connected to each other very intimately. With you and me also, you're sitting in London and I'm here in Gurgaon, and there is a connection. It's not just physical, and COVID is the real example. So he seemed to have discovered that for himself, and kind of, he really feels the people, and he's quite a people man now.
Yeah.
Everybody who talks to him loves him. With respect to us inside the family, I think, yeah, there is different. And my daughter became much more mature. She's taken the older thing, and she says, "Yeah, I know it all." I think she's mentioned that in the book also, where she's. Somewhere when he was a kid, she grew up and she took over, kind of thing. That dynamic still continues in a way some places, but it's become much more lovable and very close in a way, to all of us, after that.
Yeah. And I think one of the things, the reason you published the book was to bring obviously this amazing story to people. But I think you had a deeper purpose, didn't you? Can you talk about that? What was the motivation behind the book?
I think we also wanted to, yeah, one of these are life lessons for us. Yeah, it changed us. I don't know how much, when you ask this, how much it changed him. He should be saying that. How much it changed me? Yes, I've completely a different person, from what I was that 5 years before. To be able to let go, to be able to surrender, to be able to be sensitive, to be able to bring in structure. I see a huge change. I think I would say 180 degrees change in my own self, inside and outside.
Mm.
Um, so those tools, some things that people can pick it up, people will understand in their times. We wanted to bring it in, and also, like, especially for even brain injured people, where there are many who are, it's a very very new field. Nobody knows. Yeah, it's like, there's no standard. Like, for example, if you hurt a leg, there is, a standard procedure. This is what it is. This is what it is. But for your brain injured person, for example, till about 3-4 months, we thought he's going to one day get up and be okay fully in his brain. Like those movies you see, no, he suddenly becomes aware and he knows his memory is fully back. He had long-term memory was okay. His old past memories were okay, but short-term was, uh, even now, I would say there is some amount, a little bit here and there. He has issues, especially when it comes to learning skills. But more than that, he these tools we had, no, there's nothing available. We had to learn it all by ourselves. If somebody, even with for a brain injured person, can pick up these things, that was one of the other, ideas behind giving the book. Apart from, of course, many life tools, yeah, that the book talks about. I
Yeah,
think my
I
husband is another journey of seeing. In fact, reading the book, I found how sensitive his side has been also.
So he too has changed in the process of this experience, hasn't he?
Hugely, hugely.
I think what's interesting to me is that, as you were saying, that when somebody has brain damage, people tend to almost write them off, like, that, oh, if that person survives as a result of the brain injury, there's a general feeling that, oh, that they're never going to be the same again. They're going to be in a sort of, their personality is going to change. And actually, it just occurred to me that it's so ironic, and maybe life has a way of, like your mother had an illness that stemmed from something that perhaps medical science didn't understand. Maybe maybe if she was diagnosed today, maybe there might have been a different treatment for it. And here something happened, that was completely unexpected. And had you not dealt with it in the way you did, who knows what might have happened. So I think there's so many ways to think about this, but more importantly, I think for people to just accept that there are things that are outside of our control, and there are times when we just have to believe and we just have to let go and do the right things. It doesn't mean do nothing, but actually learn and be prepared to start again, and which is what you and Elango did so beautifully. So
That's a huge learning.
is there anything that from this experience that you have brought into what you do as in your yoga practice, and in the way you actually help people? Are you finding ways in which to make people more resilient should something like this ever happen to them?
Yeah, I wouldn't say the same kind of brain injury, but I seem to be having an affinity of bringing students. Students come to me for anxiety, panic attacks, something to do with the mind, where I've worked in very with my mother, with myself, and with my son, because the content or context is okay. It's a brain injury or it's a schizophrenia, but the work is only with your mind, your beliefs, and your trust. So all my students is, apart from the practice, it's just not, I don't just teach asana pranayama. I use in bring in, if they have a faith, I just first bring that. That's very useful, I would say, to build that shraddha, we call it, the conviction towards something larger than just me, this body. uh, to just cultivate that, and to set an intention and say this is what it is and this is my fears, to work on them very clearly. It's made a huge difference. I'm able to pass on to my students, to the wherever they are, to be able to strive and they come to a little more, I wouldn't say happy, but resilient and more empowering themselves to look at themselves within.
Yeah, and how does that work? So does someone just do you have a website? I mean, how will people know the best way to get in touch with you and find out if you are the right person to help them?
Okay, so I'm not a big commercial person as such. I have my studio, which is called Yoga Earth. I also work with the organization called Ritambara, where we do this inner processes, where we work as groups. Basically, we work in groups uh, to understand our own psyche better using different frameworks, as I said. So Ritambara, there is a website, and I'm also on Facebook.
And can
Kavitha Elango.
people do this remotely, or do they have to be there in person to do this?
Now it's only online. In this COVID times, everything is online, so it can be done online.
Can be done remotely.
Because
Okay.
I also find even connecting, like we connect, there can be even, it need not be in person. Yes, it's, of course, is beautiful, but there can be, you can sense into a person even if they're far away. If you are very, very attentive and that listening, I think that skill I seem to have slowly picked up.
Yeah. Yeah. And just in terms of yoga, because people say that it's very important to do it correctly, otherwise, and that this is why people go to a teacher and not try and just learn it by themselves. And how well does the the fact that they're not there with you in person, how easily can you identify if somebody's doing an asana properly or not when you're, maybe on Zoom or Skype or something with them?
So as I said, I think because of many years of teaching, I do pick up, even I can see part of you, I can sense the whole body where, how it goes, you can get a feeling of what it is.
Yeah.
Plus the communication, how you talk, what you talk, the way you talk, it actually brings them to their body. So you actually equip them to be their own teacher. It's otherwise I'm like, put your hand up, bring your legs down, right? That's you can pick it out of a YouTube video or anything. That
Yeah.
can be anywhere. But what do I value add there is to bring their own mind to watch their breath, watch their body while they are practicing. And how do I communicate in a way that they can turn inward and find their own teacher, so they can be, there's an inner healer, there's an inner teacher within each one of us. Yeah, it's just clouded by many other stuff.
Yeah.
So our whole journey is to bring that into themselves.
That sounds beautiful. It's quite funny, they say when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And I've been wanting to learn yoga, and it feels like, I may have found my teacher, but we can have a separate conversation about that. So I'm kind of just wanting to wrap up. I have just one final question for you, Kavitha. So, everyone has their own sense of what makes a fulfilled life, and often that, that definition or that the criteria will evolve over time. So given where you are today, given the big turning points you've experienced in the past 10 or so years, what would you say is your definition of a fulfilled life?
I think total acceptance of who I am and in touch of what I am and what I don't even know much more. There is much more. To be in touch with that is so fulfilling. And from that space, when I operate from, it's a little deeper space when I operate from, I can actually sense into the other people also. Because from that deeper space, all of us are in harmony. There is connection there. Uh, that's the deepest fulfillment for me, to even understand the worst rapist ever, to be able to see, understand what he is, where he is, why he is so. I think that seems to be my uh, destiny or whatever, to understand that, to be okay, not okay. You understand what I mean? That to sense and to accept and to acknowledge, like, hey, that's also a human being. That's also, this is why, to leave all the polarity, to co-hold all the polarities and just be one is what is.
Yes, that's
Seems to be
beautiful.
better.
It's kind of almost like coming back to the point where we're all connected. And,
Definitely.
so that's that connectivity with compassion. Like, okay, so you did this, but, that doesn't make that you are still who you are. Yeah, that's beautiful. And in this current very trying, COVID times where people are going through so much pain and struggle and loss and grief and all the rest of it, what if you were to sort of leave one, I don't want to say advice, but one maybe insight for people to take away and maybe help them to deal with these difficult situations, what would that be?
I think reaching out to others, reaching out to a community, or reaching out to even a higher intelligence is the need for the hour now. Uh, you know, faith in the something deeper, but you can't just suddenly overnight get up. You've never had cherished that. You can't get up, but definitely you can find some person, hopefully, because the talking about your own grief and vulnerability is something being getting shut off with the COVID times. You're not even able to go and be with that person. But like before, there used to be a ritual of 13 days, people coming in, pouring in. It's just 1 hour, some prayer meeting happens, and you're out and you have to go to do your normal stuff. I think being with your own feelings and with connecting to people who can understand you is so vital. People can find that, that's one of our dreams, to also bring that to people as much as possible.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Kavitha. I've really, enjoyed this conversation. So much wisdom and so much, compassion in your entire sort of demeanor. So I'm really grateful that you took the time to do this with me.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing back to my basics that I am, to reminding me and just being with that is just a pleasure. Thank you.
And I think just to tell people that your book is available. Is it available
It's in
everywhere?
Amazon.
Amazon. Okay. Is
Yeah.
it available internationally as well, or is it mainly?
Yes. Ebooks are available in Amazon.
Brilliant. Okay, so we're going to put a link in the show notes so people can go and check it out. And yeah, thank you very much and have a really, really good day. And it's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.